I'm Diana Cappello. I am the sales engineering manager for our customer growth team at Clary, which means we focus solely on the existing customers and growing our business with them. And with me, I have Selin. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Selin Korustan. I'm one of the sales engineering directors at WalkMe. I've been in sales engineering and professional services, so both pre and post sales for the last about 15 years. And looking forward to chatting with everyone today, sharing some ideas.
Great. And we also have Vikram.
Hello, everybody. My name is Vikram Gupta. I'm a senior director at Akamai Technologies. I've been in pre-sales for over 20 years. I'm also a Gallup certified coach, and I'm really excited to be here.
And Rohan.
Hi, everybody. My name is Rohan. I currently head up the sales engineering org at gong.io. I've been in SE roles for the past decade plus, previously at Oracle, Jive Software, and Zora. And I'm looking forward to the session.
Great. And we're all here today to talk about the challenges and opportunities of creating a coaching culture in your team. But before we jump into that, I thought it would be fun to get to know the panelists a little bit. So I'm going to invite everyone to share something that you're looking forward to in your personal life. So I'll go first. Planning our first winter trip to Tahoe this month and teaching my two young girls to ski. Selin, how about you?
I thought about this and there was a couple things I'm looking forward to, but this is going to sound really cheesy. The thing I'm looking forward to most is actually having Thanksgiving with my extended family for the first time in 2 years and seeing people and being able to hug them. So mine's COVID related.
Love it. Vikram, how about you?
I'm traveling to Portugal in 13 days. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. Some great food and wine.
That sounds amazing. Please share pictures. Rohan, how about you?
Yeah, similar to Vikram, maybe not as exotic, but I'm looking forward to a trip we have planned for next week, actually, just to New York to visit some friends. So it'll be a family affair. So if anyone actually has some good kid-friendly recommendations, feel free to put them in the Slack channel so I know what we can do during the day. But I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of people with great ideas. Speaking of the Slack channel, I'm just opening it up right now. We have a poll that should be launching any minute now if it hasn't already. I used Polly to pre-schedule this. Perfect. Seeing some people voting in there. So please go vote for the next poll. Let's see. I'm learning this new slide deck. It's not a demo unless something is out of order, right? I don't recognize this slide. So, Rohan.
Yeah, I can maybe just give a 2-minute here. This session is brought to you by Gong, a bit awkward to say, but essentially just a little bit about Gong and why we exist. What we have found is that running your business, running companies in general can be super painful. Whether you're an individual contributor, a manager, or an executive, there are 3 main pains that we have found that every company feels. First, there are a lot of opinions that drive decisions instead of facts. Second, there are a lot of manual tasks that employees are doing within a company to try to gain insights. And thirdly, teams are often misaligned internally, especially in remote environments. So it's hard to keep everyone working on the same key priorities. That is why Gong exists. If Diana, you can go to the next slide, please. Our main goal is to unlock your full potential as an employee and as a company, and we do this in 3 different ways. First, we let you make decisions about your people, about your deals, and about any company strategic initiatives you might have based on reality. Second, we let you focus on the work that actually matters instead of manual tracking of information and manual analysis of data. And thirdly, we let your entire company stay aligned on the same information so that there's no dropped information between departments and there's increased collaboration. So reality-based, autonomous, and aligned, that's what companies need is what we found. That's why Gong exists.
Love it. We've been at Clary, we've been a Gong user for a couple of years now, and it has been extremely helpful, especially in coaching.
Yeah, exactly.
which brings me to the poll. I'd love to know how many here fall in this magic quadrant of coaching, if you will. So if you go to the Slack channel, you can put in 1, 2, 3, or 4. And right now I'm seeing we're falling in the 3 and 4 section. So over to the right, which is great. My goal for this session for you all is that you walk away inspired to do coaching in your teams and with a vision of how you're going to execute that and what positive outcomes it will have for your team. So we'll leave the poll open the rest of the day, but it looks like overwhelmingly people are coaching in an ad hoc situational moment. So that gives us some good context for what we're going to talk about today. Why does coaching matter? For us leaders, for me personally, it's about creating and maintaining top talent. And in the pre-sales team, I know it can't just be me, but we are all naturally curious. We want to continually evolve. And it's not just the leaders that are like that. All of the good SEs are like that. And so they need a workplace that's going to continually challenge them and develop their skills. It's when they don't see a path forward at your company that they're more likely to jump to another one. And if you think about an analogy, I like to think about pro sports. Pro athletes have coaches, so why not your team? And who better than you? Obviously, there's other opportunities for folks that want leadership positions to stretch their muscles here and try out coaching of their peers, but it does fall on us as leaders to set the stage for what good coaching looks like and why it's important to make it a part of our culture. A second poll, and this one should be coming in about 9 minutes, wanted to first define a few terms here, because coaching, if you haven't researched it, it could be a bit nebulous. So the difference between all of these different types of coaches, if you will, is for a teacher, this is really somebody who's going to impart knowledge upon someone else. Think of the sage on the stage. Somewhat like what we're doing here. We have information, we have knowledge, and we're going to tell it to you. A consultant is somebody that you consult for assistance or advice on how to solve a particular issue or problem. And then a coach, or excuse me, I'm going to go to the bottom right. A mentor will guide you on how to do what you want to do by imparting their knowledge and their wisdom. So a mentor is somebody you might look up to, somebody with possibly more experience than you that will tell you how they achieved the outcome that you're looking for. And I hope everybody here gets an opportunity to have a mentor, even in a casual capacity. They are super important. And everybody should have both a mentor and a coach, in my opinion. And then coach is the biggest difference here is a lot of those three. You'll see, I'll tell you, I'll tell you, I'll tell you. A coach will ask you questions instead of providing answers. They'll support you and lift you up instead of judging, which is what a lot of us fall into when we're doing a demo, scoring, or feedback session. So supporting and lifting up, inspiring, motivating. And then lastly, they'll facilitate your development instead of dictating what has to be done. I've had the opportunity to work with a company called BetterUp. They provide coaches, and it was so different working with that person as opposed to my mentor that I got through Girls Club. The coach she wasn't even in our industry. She didn't know what a sales engineer was, but she could help me work through situations by asking me probing questions like, I was going on maternity leave. So if you were to go on maternity leave tomorrow, what would have to happen for you to feel good about that? What needs to change? Those kinds of open-ended questions got me thinking and solving my own problems. And so that's the type of coaching that we're going to be talking about today. So in 7 minutes, we'll post that poll in the Slack channel. So I'd love to see where you all think you are today. The goal is that we'll all know how to be number 4s by the end of the call. Rohan, again, thank you for this fabulous stat. I did a bunch of research this week on stats, and this one kept popping up. If you have an effective coaching culture, it will lead to huge results. More than 16 well, let's just say 17% increase in your annual revenue growth for companies that have optimal coaching programs. So not just coaching, not just ad hoc coaching, but optimal coaching programs is really important here. There's a lot of different things you can coach, and we're going to talk about all of those aspects today. So with that, can I stop share so that we can see everyone's lovely faces? Thank you. And let's see, I am going to try and pull up my questions right now. Like I said, it's not a demo if everything goes smoothly. So first, let me start with Selin. I'm going off the top of my head here, trying to remember the questions. But if you could share with us what you're doing to bring a coaching culture to your team.
Wouldn't be a demo or wouldn't be a call facing other people. Yeah, in terms of creating the coaching culture that we have at WalkMe, I think the big thing that I like to sort of stress is feedback and coaching, being a sounding board, all of that stuff kind of ties together. And so our biggest initiative and our biggest objective as leaders at WalkMe and myself has been, how do we tie and open people up to be vulnerable to each other? And so creating that sort of coaching culture and that fabric it's taken some time. But the way that we do it is we try to make it so that everyone kind of exposes themselves and makes themselves vulnerable to each other and sharing ideas and opening themselves up to ideas from each other, criticizing, being critical, all of that kind of factors in. But the big thing I'd say is making coaching fun has been a big part of our culture. So we do it through competitions. We do it through using tools that are available to us, which we'll talk about, I think, in a little bit. And we tie it to performance reviews and make it part of it that way. So it's always present. So the two things I'd say are competitions. We do something called the Demo Palooza. We try to do it once every 6 months, maybe. And we have everyone take a topic, and we don't give them a lot of guidance, and we let them take a stab at what they think sort of articulating the value through the product would actually look like with minimal guidance. And everyone on the team, across all 30 of us, is required to actually come up with something and then present to their peers. And it really exposes and makes everyone feel really open to each other, open to ideas. That's how we set that culture. And then the other piece of that is, these collaboration sessions that we do bi-weekly. Everyone comes with something to the table, ideas to share with each other, struggles that they've had. And then we go through, and so everyone kind of gives that feedback. That coaching culture itself doesn't just come from me and other leaders, it actually comes from their peers too. And so those are the two things I'd say really helped us build a coaching culture, is looking at peers and everyone being really open with each other. Vikram, I think maybe you have some stuff that you've also done too.
Yeah, and maybe I'll start off with, why is it hard, right? And it's hard because when someone comes to you and says, hey, Vikram, I need some advice. Yeah, at first, every part of my body wants to give them that advice, right? And wants to tell them what to do. And it's because we've been trained all our lives, right? Because that's actually what we've done. And it's also because we care about that person. What we don't realize is that we might be solving the wrong problem, right? We might be, even if they come to us with a perfectly worded challenge, it may not be the right one. And the second challenge is maybe our advice isn't as good as what we think it is, right? There are so many cognitive biases that are wired in our brains and in our minds that we may not actually be as good a driver or a cook or an advice giver as we think. So finally, if you know what the problem is, you figured out, that amazing question to really uncover the challenge, and you have the gold dust and you know exactly what the answer is. The question to ask yourself is, what's the right leadership act right now? What should I do, right? What's in the best interest of this individual? And maybe it is to give them the advice, but perhaps it is to give them the opportunity to find their own way, make their own mistakes, create their own wisdom, and really uncover the path to this journey themselves. right? So I think that's why it's hard. It's because it's all about taming our advice monster. It's about taming ourselves and not jumping in and giving the answer, but really taking a step back and asking questions, asking great questions.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense. I think, Vikram, the one thing I'll add is that it starts with us. It starts with us as leaders as well. If our individual contributors and our first line managers see us, who might be second line managers and above, doing this coaching and kind of instilling that culture within our organization, our first line managers will do it as well. So we can't always just rely on, okay, yes, we need to make sure that our first line managers are doing it and enforcing it on them. We have to do it ourselves. We have to show them the benefit of it as well. If they see the benefit, our first line managers see the benefit, then they will do it for their direct reports as well. That's one thing on it.
So Rohan, I use Gong to call coach my team. I'm curious, what do you coach to, and how do you know what you want to coach each individual SE on?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Forget like even which tools that are used. I think there might be a few different buckets of things that not even just SEs, but any rep or any customer facing person can be coached on. There's probably something to the effect of soft skills, like how are you doing from a patient's perspective, from a curiosity perspective, from a discovery perspective. There's something around product knowledge. And there might be coaching that's needed around, yes, how is this person getting up to speed on the product and the industry that they're actually selling to? And there's probably a third bucket around just the job that SEs do, right? How do you have good demo skills? How do you have good discovery skills? How do you have good solutioning skills as well? It's probably three different buckets that I think of when I think about coaching and coaching the managers that I have and the individual contributors that I have.
And Vikram, how about you? I know you've rolled out an official coaching program through, I know it's a
Akamai.
different name now, but no, not, yes, Akamai, but I was thinking Strength Finders. They renamed it, right?
Clifton Strengths, yeah.
Yes, Clifton Strengths. How do you use that and what do you coach to?
Yeah, it's, I'm assuming most SEs are great poker players. And I think of coaching just like poker. Right. So in poker, you're playing the person, not their cards. In coaching, you're coaching the person, not the situation. So it's really about the situation. It's really about the person. And the best way to do it is to be genuinely, authentically interested and be curious and ask them questions. Right. So what we've done with at Akamai, and maybe we can bring that slide up if this is the right time to talk about it, is we engaged with an executive coach. His name is Brian Newman. Look him up on LinkedIn. He's been a game changer. And we started to work with a tool called Clifton Strengths. It's by a company called Gallup. It's been around for many years, and what it does is you take a test and it uncovers about 34 strengths. Now, we've all taken tests in our professional life. And how is this different? It's different because the likelihood of somebody having the same top 5 as you is 1 in 300,000 people. The likelihood of someone having the same top 5 strengths in the same order as you is 1 in 30 million, which means that, hey, look at people on LinkedIn. There might be one more person with the same strengths as you. So it really shows you the uniqueness and the strengths that you bring to the table. We launched a coaching program around it. And remember, Akamai is an 8,000 plus employee organization. And coaching and this program came from PreSales, came from the SE org, which is fascinating. We kicked it off. We started to build cohorts, started with leadership, and we had them take this test. We worked with an exec coach to really help create other coaches within Akamai. And so he trained up about six or seven directors and above, people that really wanted to be in it, people that were really leaning in and motivated to do this. And we went through a rigorous session with him. We coached our coach, and then we got in front of managers. And then we started to, once they got this report on themselves, we started to then coach them on their strengths. Helping people fix their weaknesses prevents failure. Helping people work on their strengths guarantees success, right? And that was the whole mantra, which is, hey, we're not here to make you anyone you want to be. We're here to make you the best version of yourself, the best that you can be. And that really empowered people. That really helped people feel relieved, validated, and really seen. So we worked through that, did a one-on-one coaching session, and then we brought the team in a cohort. And that was great because we all showed up with virtual backgrounds with our strengths in the back. And how awesome is it to have your peers tell you about, yes, Vikram, I absolutely agree. This is, you actually have this strength. It's validating. And so we broke this out into helping them name those strengths, claim those strengths as theirs, and help aim their strengths towards their future goals. And so now it's a cyclical process. We're coaching every single day, every single time. There is not a coaching hour, but every minute is an opportunity to coach.
I love that. I've read the Strength Finder book. I've taken the tests. And for those of you that missed it in the beginning, we're talking about the Gallup-Clifton strengths. Here is the information that we're processing. And since I've taken that test twice, it's wonderful and it's fun, and we talk about it for a week or two. How do you make this stick? How does coaching last longer than that moment? And how do you make it have an impact? And Selin, I think I'd love to hear from you on that particular point.
Yeah. So I have 3 things in terms of how to make it impactful. I think the first thing is your coaching has to be collaborative. You have to have the buy-in of the recipients and the person that you're working with in terms of coaching, right? I personally use that question that is in everyone's performance review of how can my manager support me better? I key off of that as my starting point for a lot of coaching, right? I use that. That's the underlying thread for me across everything. That tells me that if I focus on that, they're going to feel satisfied. And then I can, of course, bake in my own initiatives around the coaching for that particular person. And we're both happy with what we're working on. The second thing is, for me, in terms of making that coaching impactful, is understanding how the recipient digests feedback. And I have a story about this because I'm a frontline manager, by the way. I think I should probably say that to everyone. I don't manage managers, I manage ICs. And so for me, the piece was working with my team to make sure that I was presenting and giving them that coaching in a way that they could actually process it and make changes. If changes were what they were hoping to make. And so I had someone on my team who said, you're very direct and you give the feedback and then you move on. I'm someone who it takes me probably a couple days to actually digest something. Can we, when we're in a situation of coaching or feedback, can we also always just set up a follow-up call a couple days later so that we can touch base and I can tell you, what I've taken in from that particular session that we had. And I really liked that because that taught me to ask everyone, how do you want to consume this? What works for you? And then the third piece, of course, is setting reasonable expectations together. And that is just, what is the output of this coaching? And are we both committing to this? Because that's how it really becomes impactful, is if we're both committed and we can both see what the long-term goals are. And again, that all ties back to being collaborative, and in my case, tying it back to performance reviews.
I love it. I'd like to talk a little bit more tactical now. That's my area of strength. I'm a problem solver. So if we could get the slides back up, I wanted to share one way that I've done coaching. This isn't a tech that you could buy or anything, but I was part of a training program for women in sales that want to be promoted to the next level. So I went through this coaching myself before I was promoted to manager. And this was the model that they gave me for call coaching. So a very specific type of coaching. And they called it the coach-in model. And when I rolled this out to my team, and I invite you all to use this too, if you'd like, the goal that I told them was, I want each SE to leave these coaching sessions feeling empowered and looking forward to their next call. And so that's what I would open every call with when I clarified expectations for our coaching session. And then this was the harder part for me because I'm a fixer and a doer. I had to take a step back as a coach and comment on what I observed and then ask the open-ended questions about how and why and what else and what's the real issue here, those sorts of things. I've got them all on a little notepad right here so that I can remember. And then I get them to commit to actions and I ask them how they might want my help. Not that I can always do what they ask, but I make sure I lay out proper expectations, and then we agree on mutual next steps that'll happen before our next coaching session. So that's one of the ways that I make the coaching flow from week to week. And again, take a screenshot if you want more information. This was from Factor 8, Lauren Bailey. She leads Girls Club and Factor 8. So she'll have more details there too, but I'm happy to facilitate. So that's just one tool that I use, but I'd like to open it up to the group. What other tools do you all use when you're coaching?
Yeah, Diana, if you go on the next slide, it's the GROW model, and GROW is almost an industry standard. G stands for goal, R is reality, O is options, and way forward. W is way forward. And if you break out your coaching session, where 40% of your time is spent in really uncovering the goal and understanding the reality, and there's some questions at the bottom there, and then the remaining time really figuring out what the options and way forward are. Understanding the goal is the most critical one. And I start every one-on-one that I have with, hey, what's top of your mind? Because if I start with what's top of my mind, then I'm already changing the narrative. So it's what's top of your mind. I love the, and what else? A question that I found really empowering is, what would you do if you were not afraid? And that really brings the authentic, vulnerable person, into the room, right? And vulnerability is another key thing here in coaching. So yeah, we can't really explain the entire GROW model here, but look it up. There's a lot of content on there on the internet.
I love that. And I think we had a slide in here with open-ended questions, but that is like my inspiration. I'm going to ask that question now, even in an interview. I had somebody who was really nervous yesterday in an interview, and I wish I had that question in my back pocket. What else? What other tools or methods do you all use?
I can share. So appropriately, Gong is a really big part of our toolbox, right, at WalkMe. And that is a big facilitator in terms of how we're handling coaching and idea sharing. So I'll give you guys a couple examples of what we do. And again, this ties back to vulnerability and openness to coaching. But we had a happy hour. This was maybe like a year ago or a year and a half ago. And we titled it Gong Wrong. And we had flyers that we put up, and it was in the office before the office closed. And we had everyone come to this happy hour, and we had food and drinks, and we basically played snippets of gong calls where things had maybe gone wrong. And that's part of the culture, I think, at WalkMe, but also within the SE organization as well, is that sort of making jokes of it, making light, but using it as a learning experience, right? So we use Gong in that capacity. The other way that we use Gong specifically for SEs is we have a folder called train wrecks. And this is where everyone goes in and voluntarily throws in snippets of calls where things went awry on a call. And then people can come in and comment on it and give each other ideas or say, why did you go down this path? Maybe you could have done this instead. Again, coaching and feedback together. Managers are super present in this as well. But that train wrecks folder is an artifact. It sits there, and we actually make it visible for new hires as they come in as well, because we want them to go in and listen. We want them to have a laugh, but we also want people to learn from each other in this situation. So Gong is a really big tool for us that we use, that we rely on pretty heavily, and we try to make it fun.
Yeah. I think besides tools as well, like I also just methodology and timing wise, I think is important as well. And what I end up doing is I end up having each SE on my team and each manager on my team have one coaching session a week. It's less about, it could be about a call, but it could be more about a deal as well. Like, let's talk about this deal. Let's talk about how you're running this deal itself. I feel like the cadence of doing that coaching and the methodology that you use is also super important, because if you don't do this on a regular basis and you put this into your daily or your weekly structure, it can get lost as well. Because otherwise everyone gets super swamped with their deals themselves, or just, you know what, let's delay it this week, let's do it next week, let's do it after the quarter's over, after the month's over. There's always something that comes up. So that cadence of actually getting it done is also super important, along with the tools that you actually use as well.
Vikram, would you like to chime in here too?
Yeah, I think it's so I'm thinking about the culture, right? I'm thinking about how do you build this coaching culture based on everything that we've heard. I think it's going to boil down to getting leadership buy-in, and I've seen where leadership completely buys in to building a coaching culture, it thrives. I think it's about creating coaching competencies and attaching it to your KPIs. It's about getting some sort of formal training or certification embedded within within the enablement charter. Perhaps even getting an executive coach agreement to tie in with the company. And if we do that, that's going to foster a higher degree of trust and engagement, right? People say that when you're coached to your strengths, you're 3x likely to have a better quality of life, which is great. It's not work, it's quality of life. Coaching actually, believe it or not, helps me with my 11-year-old boy, helps me with my wife, helps me with my friends, helps me with my coworkers, right? So it's just about, I'm otherwise when my son comes to me with a question, I'm very motivated to either say no or ask him why. But if I lead with a question, I think he figures out the answer himself. So it's pretty cool. And then 6x improvement in engagement of employees, which is awesome, right? So 3x improvement in quality of life and 6x improvement in engagement of employees. And all it is asking questions and taming that advice monster.
I love that. One of the ways I've made it part of my team's culture is I actually alternate one-on-ones and coaching sessions. So they don't go more than 2 weeks without some sort of coaching session. So it's become our operating rhythm on the customer growth team to have coaching. I also friendly mandate, that everybody have a recap or a debrief session after every customer call. So the AM, the CSM, the SE, whoever was on that call, we all reserve 30 minutes after the call to debrief on it and give each other and invite feedback from each other. What did we do well? What should I do differently next time? And who's gonna do X? What about you all? How do you make this part of your culture of your team?
We can make it a part of our culture by making sure. So I think it's about leading from the front, right? So if I'm asking questions, my team's going to ask questions, right? And if I'm asking, if they come to me with a problem, they know I'm going to ask them a question, and I'm not going to give them the answer. So I feel like they're a lot more self-sufficient. And they feel like they can figure out a lot of those answers themselves, and that spills over, that flows down, right? And they practice the same with their team of SEs as well. So if a SE comes to a manager with a challenge, the manager now asks them a question: what do you think you should have done? Or why do you think that was the right thing to do? Or why do you think that was not? And those kind of leading questions that are open-ended are going to make that make that SC a lot more self-sufficient. It's going to drive higher engagement and a higher degree of empowerment.
Of that, empowerment's one of my core values. So anything that we could do to make the folks feel that they have a sense of their own control of their destiny is great. I'm going to open it up to the audience now. Are there any areas that you'd like us to dig deeper on, or any follow-up questions that you have? I saw a few come in to the chat. So go to the Slack. That's where I'm picking some of these from. And one of those questions was, how do you create a culture of self-development for an SE? We've talked a lot about us coaching, but how do you get them to think about it proactively and take it upon themselves to go out and improve?
I can chime in on that one. I think one of the things that we have done, when I joined my current company, we didn't have an SE org, so I got the chance to kind of create the manifest for this organization myself. And one of the things that I did put in there is that I wanted to make sure that everyone wanted to keep getting better. So there's something in there from our kind of statement of direction for the org that shows their career progression, which makes them want to keep getting better. So if they see what's ahead, they see the career progression, then they will want to keep getting better at their job, at their skills. So they will want to not put off those coaching sessions as well. So if we have those clear goals, we have the career progression ahead, all those things that it takes to have a great organization within a company, if that's clearly defined, then people will clearly know what they're shooting for, and then they'll want to get there and they'll want to get coached. They'll want to keep that coaching culture and that coaching aspect alive as well. So I think that's one of the things that's super important, is whatever kind of manifest you have, statement of direction you have within your organization, how do you put that in there so that you can create that culture of coaching? Because everyone wants to get coached, everyone wants to keep getting better. But I got a chance to do that, but just because I started the SEO org. Most people don't have the chance to do that, but I think it's still important from the top down. If you put that into that manifest that you have for your organization, that'll help. Everyone knows where they're going, what they want to do.
And yes. I tied to brand building as well, the session right before this one, right? What do you want your brand to be? And I love that quote from Jeff Bezos about what are people saying about you when you're not in the room? And I think that helps in picking where people want to invest their time in and be better at. Also, engaging with employees with their strengths shows us, what they're naturally good at, and that allows them to help pick more areas of development that they want to focus on. So yeah, Rohan, I completely agree with what you said.
To that end, as somebody who is being promoted into manager, there's a lot of things that maybe skills they haven't had a chance to practice yet. How do you start coaching somebody on a topic like having difficult conversations?
I'd say the best advice I can give them is do not give them a crab sandwich. That's the worst thing you can give them, because our tendency is we start off with something great. Hey, you did awesome, but here's what happened. But here, this is, and then it just doesn't feel genuine. There's actually an acronym I use, and it's called EEC, and E stands for example. The other E stands for effect, and the third. And the C stands for continue or change. And if I need to give somebody feedback or have a difficult conversation, I start off with an example of, hey, here's what happened. Here's what you did. The effect of that was this. And here's what I'd like you to do, either continue or change it. So yeah, avoid the crab sandwich.
Yep. I found it especially helpful to rehearse these conversations in advance with my manager or with HR to say, hey, I've got to give, we have our quarterly review and it's not going to be a great one. Like, help me practice this. So asking others for help too, outside of just the SE team, HR is a wealth of knowledge and practice, just like you dry run your demos, dry running those types of new conversations for somebody who's a new manager is extremely helpful.
Yeah. And I will also say there's no magic bullet. There's no silver bullet that says as soon as you get promoted to manager, you're going to be a great coach. You need to know it immediately. You need to be great at it immediately. You need to be an amazing coach and an amazing mentor and everything all wrapped in one. It's going to take time. And that's okay. I think that's one thing that people always fear, that I don't think I can become a manager right now. I don't think I can become a mentor right now because I don't have these skills already. It takes time to build this. Like Vikram, you've been doing this for 20 years as a certified coach as well. Like it doesn't happen on day one. For all of us, it just takes time to actually build some of these skills. And I'm not perfect. We all have things that we can still work on. So I think the one thing I will say is that work on it. Like you have to constantly be iterating on it. You have to constantly be working at getting better at it. And one of the key skills over there is just listening. If you can start off with just listening a lot and just instead of kind of trying to give advice all the time, that'll help. That'll be a good starting point for how you're trying to move from a peer to a manager and then start to give kind of coaching advice as opposed to peer level advice as well.
Rohan, I love that. And I just want to quickly add to it. Just from my experience, when COVID started, I had never officially coached anybody. So this is all very new for me. And if I can do it, anyone can do it. So think about the last year and a half. That's really when I've invested a lot of my time in coaching and self-development and helping people. But that's not a lot of time. And it really, I haven't been doing this 20 years. So there's hope. You all can do it.
Love that. And there was a follow-up question. I'd like to open this to everybody. I think it was specific for Vikram, but I'd love to know from the group. We'll make this our last question. How many levels are in your sales engineering team for somebody to grow into before they hit the top? Because that kind of limits it shouldn't limit our capacity to coach, right? But if we're talking about retaining top talent, how far can somebody continue up that ladder? So Vikram, how many levels of SEs are there on your team?
There's 5 or 6. I think about it differently. I think about it as it's not when you become a principal SE, your journey doesn't end. We have a lot of career SEs. We have people that want to be SEs all their life, and that is amazing. That is awesome because they are the best there is. We have people that want to do the SE job and then get into sales or get into product management or get into marketing or become an entrepreneur and do other things. And that is amazing as well. So I don't think of this as a limiting function in any which way. I feel like coaching happens all our life. I think most successful CEOs of large organizations have coaches. Pro athletes, as you said, Diana, have coaches, right? Tom Brady has a coach who is not as good a football player as he is, or Cristiano Ronaldo or Messi or any of the great sports people. Their coaches were never as great as they are, right? And so you need a coach pretty much all your life.
Of that. Selin, how about you? How many levels and how do you motivate beyond the end?
We have 4 levels. And for us, I think we have a very finite number of people that actually are at that principal level at the top. And we are trying to constantly iterate on what that principal role is and keep it really open and flexible so that if there's someone who happens to be more technical, the definition of their principal role is a little bit more geared towards their strengths and the things that they want to do versus someone who's a little bit more sales focused, business focused. We kind of tailor it to them. So we keep it open, but the top level for us for an IC is the principal. We have plenty of people who are career ICs, and I'm so grateful for them. I was a career IC for a very long time. And so, I think that there's a lot of paths upward and outward to different orgs as well.
Love it. Rohan?
Yeah, I think we have 5 or 6. I think we have 6. But yeah, I think it's less about once you reach the top, just how do I keep going up? It's just what's the specialization? What are you focusing on? How are you getting better at your craft? Are you now an industry speaker in a specific area? are you the subject matter expert across the whole company in a certain area? Like it's that specialization that I think about more. That's how you get better at your craft once you reach a certain level. Again, I think there's still room to grow after a certain level as well, though.
And we are going to share these slides. And in the slides, we put in a bunch of resources, all the ones we talked about today and a few others with links so that you can read some of these wonderful articles, books, listen to these podcasts, and so on. So thank you so much, everyone. Selin, Vikram, Rohan, and Greg, over to you.